Which way, Western man? Marriage or promiscuity? And why there is no in between for modern men. Throughout this video, I'm going to explain to you why I believe in the coming decades there is going to be a divide between men who have large families and get married versus the men who actively take themselves out of the gene pool. I'm going to explain the differences, the reality, and the consequences of these lifestyle decisions. And also, I'm going to cover an article that I wrote earlier in the day when I was making this recording to further explain my point. You see, by 2030, 50% of women over the age of 30 in the West are going to be single and childless. Many would look at this statistic and say, well, that's not my problem. It is, because you live in the West. And secondly, this implies a deeper problem, the divide between men and women. And thirdly, this also means that men over the age of 30 by 2030 are also going to be single and childless, about 50%. So we will have over 50% of men and women dying alone. No legacy, nothing. And there's going to be a lot of miserable people in the years to come, because with the increase of technology, more and more people getting into health, providing something big happens, people are going to live longer lives. And you have a very small window of your fertility when you're young. The older you get, the harder it is to have kids, and the less kids you may have. And in most cases, with most people, you might not even have kids. And the regret and the damage that is going to do psychologically to most men and women in the coming decades is going to be massive. So let me cover this tweet that I made talking about this to make my point. Because I see a lot of young men, they fall into this modern dating advice that I'm going to just avoid marriage. But they're not going to be celibate. A small number of men who, perhaps for religious reasons or other health problems, may choose to remain celibate. And I do believe there is a very tiny fraction of men that can remain celibate. But the reality is, most people won't remain celibate for long, even if they try. And especially when you look at modernized people who do not believe in the Lord, they go off of their lust and of their feelings, they for sure are not going to be celibate. And if they don't adhere to marriage, they are going to go the promiscuous route. Let me explain. If you are going to eschew marriage and encourage other men to do the same, I hope you also eschew sex. Christian, what does eschew mean? Eschew means to purposefully and intentionally oppose or be against something. So for the modern men watching, if you are so against marriage and you encourage other men to also be against marriage, then you should also be against sex. Because one of the consequences of sex is children. And children have a right and they deserve to have a mother and a father in the home. And if you are not committed or love the woman you are making love to, well, guess what? The children suffer because of your sin and her sin. Their blood is on your hands. Otherwise, you are intellectually dishonest. If you won't marry because of admittedly biased divorce and custody proceedings against men and fathers, what you are saying is you don't trust God/yourself to choose well. No one has a gun to your head. You have to vet the woman, right? There are no guarantees in life for any of us. But putting God first in your courting process and also in your marriage certainly helps. More to the point of intellectual consistency, however, if you intentionally remain unmarried but continue to sleep with women, you're exposing yourself and your life to be potentially conned and falsely charged by these women who you already think are so evil and hypergamous and untrustworthy. You're allowed to think what you want about women, which you are wrong because there are good ones and bad ones. But it's illogical to say, I won't marry one, but I'll let several into my home/bed/life. Plus, a woman you can bed intentionally or otherwise get pregnant with or not without your kid, she can choose to take the kid, to keep the kid, and come after your money. So if you already think modern women and women in general are just so awful, then there's no need to marry them, right? Which would imply that there would be no need to have sex with them in the first place. But if you continue to do the latter, all you're saying is you are too selfish or too stupid to actually stand on principle and protect yourself. And this is the dichotomy of modern men. They're hypocrites. They're against marriage, but they're okay with sleeping around when it suits them. They want to use a woman for sex, but they don't want to commit to her. You can't have it both ways. So this is my stance on it. If you are so against marriage, you should be against sexual intimacy, because there's consequences that come from it. So which way, Western man? Marriage or promiscuity? The Bible's clear, Genesis 2:18. It's not good that you should be alone. God said you need a helpmeet that he's made suitable for you, a spouse, your lifelong companion. If you neglect that and you try and use a woman for your own selfish gain, you're going to pay the price. And there are two types of people that I think will come from this life over the coming decades. Men that go for marriage and men that are promiscuous. So let's say you go for marriage. If you get married, and again, this is assuming you're marrying a godly woman, a good woman that you love and you actually trust, well, you are going to have a lifelong companion, a wife. If you are both attracted to each other, you share the same values, you are going to have a blissful, fulfilled marriage, full of passion, full of intimacy, full of amazing memories, growing old together, building a life together, being there for each other. That satisfies all of your human needs, right? Then the consequence of having a loving wife, if you're both healthy, is you have children. And then grandchildren. What does this mean? You have a legacy. There's no success without succession. If you reproduce, and on top of that, you raise good, godly children. And I know someone might say in the comments, but some kids turn out wrong. Look, the Bible says if you raise them in the way that they shall go as they age, they will never depart from the faith. If your kids grow up in a stable home and they see that mum and dad love each other and you are actually present with your children and you and your wife leave a good example, statistically speaking, they are far more likely to grow up with a healthy self-esteem, more confident, more positive attitude towards monogamy and loyalty, and to start a marriage of their own as they grow older. They're going to have less issues, less damage, because they have a blueprint from you and your wife if you marry right. And if you do that well, what is the next consequence? Well, you get taken care of in old age. You see, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is children are the ultimate retirement plan in a righteous way. You see, if you go to an old person's care home, you may be mistreated, you may be neglected. Whereas if your children are raised well and they love you, they will honor you in your old age because you raised them well. And if they have the means and the funds, you are statistically far more likely to not only, when you age better, have a graceful death, be taken care of, be watched over by your children and grandchildren, but they will protect you. If you are old and you are childless, the government, the state, there's no descendants, you don't have a will, they can take what they want. But when you have your ducks in order, as the Bible says, a righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, 2 generations. You and your wife raise these kids well, and the grandkids, they'll take care of you. They will watch over you. They will make sure no harm comes your way. They will protect the elderly, which is you. They will do the honorable thing. So you have a guarantee of being taken care of no matter what happens to you. Whereas if you're someone who's childless and all alone, this ain't happening, bruv. Bye-bye. And of course, with a life well lived, comes with you being remembered by your loved ones. If you have done very well and you have treated your children and your grandchildren well, statistically speaking, there is a very high chance that you'll be remembered. Whether that's in your community, in your family, but your loved ones, the people whom you have embraced with the warmth and the love of your life, the reality is you're going to be remembered. You will have people in your bloodline that will look up to you and they will remember you. There's a sweetness there. Hey, if you're all saved, you get to reunite in heaven, so that's wonderful. But when you pass away on this earth, if you do have descendants and you raise them well, you're remembered by them. I think that's a very nice way to live. You get to grow old with the woman of your dreams, surrounded by your children and your grandchildren. That's a beautiful thing. Your life comes full circle. But what happens to the promiscuous people? It's not so, is it? The reality is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I think men are either going to go for marriage or promiscuity. Because celibacy is like a fine line in the middle, and such a small percentage of men will, again, who are religious, more traditional. I think the only people that will remain celibate will perhaps be the ones who found someone they really loved. They died young and they just choose to be alone. Or when they get older, their spouse dies and they never remarry because they love them so much. Those will typically be most normal people. Other than that, maybe people who have severe disabilities and just can't find someone, they might choose to be celibate. Or very few religious people. Other than that, there's no such thing as someone being celibate, especially modernized people that don't value sex and intimacy for what it's called to be. Which is why, if you're not going to marry right, you're going to fall into the promiscuous line of people, of men. What this means is, if you don't find someone because you're so creepy, so weird, and you push good women away, you will end up alone. This means no wife, so you're sexually frustrated all the time. Your needs are never met. This means no children, no descendants. You're all alone. Just like how 50% of men and women are going to be single and childless over the age of 30, this is what you will be. You'll be that bitter, angry guy who's jaded. You'll be looking over at those who did marry and are happy. And you'll realize what you missed out on. The next thing is, other consequences, most people might end up in modern long-term relationships, whereas you don't actually get married per se, but you're kind of getting into your relationship. It goes nowhere. You break up, you meet someone else, you're having sex with them, and it's just like you have this relationship, but it goes nowhere. You don't really love them. You know she wasn't what you really wanted, and you aren't what she wants, but you're just using each other for glorified sex because it's just better than being alone, right? Which again, it's saying something. We're meant to have a companion, but you're doing it the wrong way. So what happens is, I think most men are going to settle. You're going to hook up, sleep around, live that life, and then you're going to try and settle down. But because you're not going to vet well or court someone properly, and especially the older you get, again, most guys wait till they're over 30 to get married and find a woman. All the good ones are taken when they're young. And it's like, you can't really match well with a younger woman if you're an older man. When women say they want older men, they're typically referring to guys that are 2 to maybe 5 years older than them. Old enough to lead them, but young enough to grow old with and they can relate and bond with. There's no mentally stable 20-year-old woman that wants a 35 or 40-year-old man, unless she's a gold digger or has serious mental issues. Everybody knows this, and that's just a transactional relationship. What are you going to do? Be a father when you're 48 or 50? What? By the time your kid turns 18, you're 70? Late 60s? No. You could be having grandchildren by your 60s. You could be having great-grandchildren by your 80s. So it's like there's a chapter of life that you missed out on when you're an older man. And you listen to the modern advice of, yeah, bro, I'm just going to focus on myself and grind in my 20s. I'll find a girl when I'm in my 30s. She didn't grow with you. She wasn't with you when you were building your career or your business. Now you're old. Now what? Now you've got to settle for whoever will take you. Because the older you are, you lose your options. There's a finite choice to choose from. When you're younger, more handsome, more fertile, that's the best chance for you to find a good, honourable, loving woman. Not to say you can't do it when you're older, but it's harder. And most people settle. And you're with someone you don't even love. You're waking up every morning with someone you don't even care about. And you're still thinking about the ex that got away 10 years ago, right? Or the girl that you should have asked out, but you didn't. You have all these what ifs and regrets. That's a terrible way to live. But that's how it's going to be for most people who didn't prioritize marriage. You prioritize everything else except what you're made to do, which is to reproduce and find someone to love. You reap what you sow. The next thing is, most men are going to have transactional relationships. Some guys, if they're not too much of the insult, and they still can put themselves out there, you could say, if they don't want a relationship or marriage, they're going to get into one-night stands. And again, you are what you do. If you engage in one-night stands and you only attract trash women, it's because of the man that you are. If you're a one-night stand type of guy, that's the sort of woman you're getting. It's not only is it unfulfilling, but it damages you, it ruins you. You're lonely, you're left very lonely and empty afterwards. So guys that have this sort of relationship, right, one-night stands, maybe you're hooking up with a girl a few times, and there's a lot of men now, they're getting older and older, they turn to prostitutes. They're that desperate because they're too prideful to find someone in their looks range, find someone with the same values as them, and just get married to a good woman. But no, they think they're going to be like Leonardo DiCaprio, who's in his 40s or 50s, marrying 25-year-olds. They're transactional relationships anyway, and that's not someone you should look up to. But a lot of these guys that they're on the internet, they think, yeah, bro, I'm 35, 40. Where's the young women at? The young women that are 20 are with a 25-year-old, 24-year-old. They're not with a 30 or 40, 50-year-old. Yikes. It's like, and then it's like, if you're 30, 35 plus as a man and you want to have kids, then it's like you have to vet the woman. You have to make sure she's right for you. And since so many of these guys are so desperate, they skip all of that. Oh, I'll just find someone. And they don't want to because they know deep down what they missed out. Your time to find someone should be in your 20s. That is so crucial. It's not to say you can't do it when you're older. I'm not saying you can't, but ideally it's your 20s. I'm going to be honest with you, and it's always going to be like that. Okay? Men have a biological clock too. Male sperm count starts dropping after 30. Most guys, I'm going to take good care of myself and I'll age fine. You can to a degree, but genes are genes. Most guys, you get into your 30s, you get older. You get weaker. You get smaller, right? You shrink a little bit as you age. So these things slowly start to happen. You can't beat Father Time. Your physical prime is 18 to 25 as a man. Trust me, I'm getting old myself and I know this stuff. So it's like a lot of guys are Peter Pan. You're delusional. You think, I'm going to be 20 forever. You're not. You're not. Okay? Even for the ladies, there's a reason why they call it Forever 21, not Forever 31. That's reality. So again, most men, you're going to have a promiscuous lifestyle of transactional relationships. The promiscuous people are just going to keep being with the promiscuous people in a cycle of misery, right? The town sluts with the playboy men. The other consequence is, well, if you don't marry or you don't have kids, you are typically going to be neglected in old age. As mentioned before with marriage, children are the ultimate retirement plan. And that's what a lot of people don't seem to understand. I'm not saying you're using your children, but with love and honor and integrity, children always took care of their parents in older age. It's a very Western thing to send your kids out the home and just leave. Nothing to do with your kids. Like, you look at Arabic families, they stick together. Asian families, they stick together. It's white men and women that just send their kids out. And you wonder why the West is a mess. And it's not more so in Eastern Europe, but Central Europe, but for the wrong reasons, of course. A lot of people settle, they've married the wrong person. There's just a string of broken families. I get why a lot of people want to leave young, but there's no one teaching the youth, right? I digress. My point is, most guys who live the modern promiscuous life, they're going to reach an age where they missed out, didn't have kids, can't find a woman that wants to have kids with them. So what happens? They get old, like the old cat lady, and when you're an old man, there's no kids, there's no descendants, there's no legacy. Guess what? You're neglected in your old age. Even if you want to be a passport bro and go off marry some Filipino woman who's going to use you for a green card, she's probably going to leave you and take your money. Or that relationship is going to fall because the older you are, some guy in his 60s or 70s dating a 20, 30-year-old woman, she's going to leave you, find some other guy. So you're going to end up alone. You're going to be neglected because there's no one to take care of you. We see it more and more today with the aging population. Less people care about the elderly. And if that society, which is in a multicultural society, no one's going to care about the old. In a homogenous society, yes, maybe more people will care about the old because it's an extension of the family, of the bloodline, right? But the reality is, if you don't have a wife or kids or grandkids, statistically, you are less likely to even be taken care of or considered. And this is, I think, the big disconnect that's going to happen with the older generation. Over the coming decades, more and more men and women are going to go, oh my goodness, I don't have a family, I'm alone. The state going to take care of you? The government going to take care of you? They sure as heck ain't going to love you. You reap what you sow. And this is what's going to happen. And I would even say, even if you, because again, promiscuous people, a lot of these people as well, it doesn't mean they're childless. Some of them have kids out of wedlock, bastardized kids, single dad, single mom, that sort of type relationship. Usually, if you didn't marry the right person, or you're just a deadbeat dad or a deadbeat husband, and you neglected your wife and kids and you abandoned them, most kids that grow up and they didn't really have you as a present father, or you were just never there, they don't have a relationship with you, neither do they want a relationship with you. So even if you have children, most of them are never going to want anything to do with you. So they will neglect you anyways, if you do have any. If you live a promiscuous lifestyle, your kids are not going to honor you in their old age. Most won't. Some might, but most won't. So this is why I said typically, not entirely. Typically, you will be neglected in old age. If you're mistreated or taken advantage of by social security systems, and your pension is taken from you, and carers in an old carer's home mistreat you, no one's there to protect you much. Who's going to pay for the lawyer? The state. Yeah, they're going to represent you, right? That's reality. This is the future for most men and women who are modern. The future only belongs to the men and women that marry and have a big family with godly values. That's it. Well, we can rebuild. We can make it a better place in the future. All the liberals, all the lefties, all the people that have serious problems in their head, they're taking themselves out the gene pool. But if you've been brainwashed and you want to break free, if you're watching this in your 20s and your 30s, you take serious action now and you find someone and you have a family, or you find love. Because loneliness is a killer. It's a big one. And robots and machines and TV screens and AI can never replicate what God made, which is men and women for love and for companionship. The next thing is string of broken relationships that haunt you. People that live a promiscuous life, you see it with a lot of people who are in like the adult industry. There's a high rate of, ending their lives. They can't deal with what they've done to themselves, what's happened to them. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of brokenness. And I think there's a lot of men in the coming decades who maybe missed out on finding a good woman, or they're just reminiscing of the bad relationships they had, or what happened to them, or what they did that was wrong, and they just don't heal from it. They're too weak, they can't deal with it, they don't come to God, so they're just in their head all the time, and it damages them. And that they have to deal with that for the rest of their life. That happens. Next would be, if you're living a promiscuous life, hey, STDs are statistically going to come from that. STDs, other sort of health problems from your sexual uncleanliness, which if you don't get it fixed through antibiotics, it's going to carry you throughout the rest of your life, and your immune system is going to pay the price. And finally, coincides with the first one, you're not just forever alone, ultimately, because if you settle, you're actually forever alone, because you don't have a bond with this person truly. You're not open to them. They're not really open to you. You both know you settle for each other. You're both miserable shells of human beings that are just using each other. You don't love each other. So you're actually alone. Okay? You guys remember that famous actor who passed away in 2014? Robin Williams? He was always smiley. He's always comedian, very funny. And he took his life. And he said the worst thing that can happen to you is to be surrounded by people that make you feel alone. And when you settle and you're around the wrong people that don't love you, or you don't really love them, You're alone because your relationships are transactional. There's no love, there's no desire, there's no passion, there's no intimacy, there's no authentic connection. So you're actually alone. So ultimately, if you're promiscuous and you try and find someone, you are going to be forever alone if you don't change. And what happens is, as a consequence, you die forgotten. You're already going to be neglected if you're childless, or you have bastardized children and you're not married to a good woman. Yeah, you don't have a legacy, you're already going to be neglected. But what's worse is that you die forgotten. Because nobody wants to look at you as an example of how to be. You're an example of what not to be. And 50% of the men and women that are going to be childless, they're going to be forgotten. Because there's no loved one to remember you. That's a very sad reality that's going to happen. And it'll be one for the history book soon, in the coming generations. The men and women that lived the hedonistic, selfish, me life. How did that work out? Every other human generation is reproduced in their 20s. What's happening to us now? You can choose which side you want to be on. Marry young or not. It really is that simple, gentlemen. Promiscuity, marriage. Which side are you going to be in? Are you going to repopulate the future? Have a good wife? Have loving children and grandchildren? Be taken care of by your community and your tribe? And be remembered by the ones you love? Or are you going to die forgotten and have a miserable life that comes with it? Fulfilled life or unfulfilled life? You choose. I know which one I want. I'm planning to have kids, my woman, in the next, I would say 2.5 to 3 years. And I'm already getting old. So for me, I'm looking at 28, 29 in a few years. That's what I will be. That's fine, because my spouse is going to be, in the next 2 to 3 years, she'll be 22 to 23 having her first child. That's fine. She can have all the kids through her 20s. For me, it'll be my late 20s, early 30s as we have our kids. I can grow old with them. I can have grandchildren young. Because I know how I'm going to raise my children to be. We've discussed these things. And that's going to be my future. I can't speak for you, I can only speak for myself and what I recommend based on what I'm going to do. My clients that are getting good women, that are getting engaged, that are going to marry young, they intend to have families. So if you're a young man watching and you have a knowledge gap and you want to find a good woman but you lack the knowledge and blueprint to do so, watch this video on my website, which I'll link down below, which explains how I can help you. Okay? This is my relationship mastery course and community. You watch this video when it loads in. You scroll down, you choose a time and date that suits you, and you can book a free 45-minute call with me, and I'll see if you're eligible to join. If you are serious about turning your life around and filling in your knowledge gap. Okay? But with that said, that's the video for today, gentlemen. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting topic. Let me know if you like this style. I might be doing more videos like this where I break down Twitter articles I do or other stuff I find. And I pray that you find value in this. And gentlemen, take it seriously. Your youth is valuable. Do not squander it on promiscuity, on hedonism. The time to act and take your youth with the utmost value is now. Finding a good woman now. Okay? So with that said, hope you'll have a wonderful day. God bless all of you and your families. And I'll see you all in the next one. Which way are you going to go, Western man? Let me know down below in the comments.